Operating in the Courts of Heaven by Robert Henderson. Chapter 10. The Testimony of the General Assembly. When a judge enters a courtroom, it is customary that all rise in honor of the judge. There is to be an atmosphere of honor in the courtroom toward the judge and all the happenings of the court. The court holds within its power the ability to pass judgments so they can alter lives with its decisions. So it is in the court of heaven. If a natural, earthly court has a power, how much more the heavenly court where the judge of all is presiding? In the court of heaven, there is to be an atmosphere of worship and reverence in which all proceedings and verdicts occur. This is why Scripture says that in the court of heaven we have come to the General Assembly. Hebrews 12:23 says, to the General Assembly in the church of the firstborn who are registered in heaven, to God the judge of all, to the spirits of just men made perfect. Hebrews 12:23. The term General Assembly means universal companionship or a mass meeting. This speaks of the multitude that is worshiping about the throne of heaven, from every tribe, tongue, nation, and people. Revelation 7:9-12 gives us a glimpse of this mass meeting of worship about the throne. After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude, which no one could number, of all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, saying, Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. All the angels stood around the throne, and the elders and the four living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne, and worshiping God, saying, Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom, thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen. Revelation 7:9-12. In the court system of heaven around the throne there is worship. Worship is part of the proceedings of the court. Worship at its core is governmental in nature. Worship in fact creates the atmosphere that the court of heaven operates from. When we worship, we take our place in the General Assembly that is in the court system of heaven. Even though our feet are on the planet, in the spirit we ascend, become part of this worshiping multitude in the courts of heaven. We often say that God's presence came as we worshiped. I would like to present another concept. Perhaps the presence of the Lord didn't so much come as we ascend or went into the atmosphere of the throne in the courts of heaven. When we worship, we step into the governmental process of the throne room of heaven. We take our place in the throne room, and from there become a part of the process of heaven in rendering verdicts that touch and change the earth. From our worship, we shouldn't just get goosebumps and a little teary-eyed. When our worship is joined in heaven, we will exercise governmental authority of the courts of heaven. We can see this somewhat in Revelation 5:18-14. These verses show us that worship starts around the throne and moves from sphere to sphere until all the creation is worshiping. Now, when he had taken the scroll, the four living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each having a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain, and have redeemed us to God by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation, and have made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. Then I looked, and I heard the voice of many angels around the throne, the living creatures and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000, and thousands of thousands, saying with loud voice, Worthy is the Lamb who was slain, to receive the power and riches and wisdom, and strength, and honor and glory and blessing, and every creature which is in heaven and on the earth and under the sea, and such are in the sea, and all are in them, I heard saying, Blessing and honor and glory and power be to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb forever and ever. Then the four living creatures said, Amen, and the 24 elders fell down and worshipped him who lives forever and ever. Revelation 5:18-14. Worship begins about the throne with the four living creatures and the multitude of angels and elders, thousands times 10,000s of them. Then it invades every creature in heaven, on earth and under the earth. It impacts those who are in the sea. They were all heard to be worshiping the Lord who sits on the throne. The worship that had its origin with the four living creatures about the throne touches and involves all the creation of God before it is finished. This tells me a couple things. Worship doesn't originate on earth. It originates in heaven. The worship that God desires and is necessary in heavenly judicial activity has its source in heaven itself. The second thing this tells me is we are to become a part of the worship about the throne, and not to separate our worship here in the earth. As we worship, we are to enter and stand in the courts of heaven, helping to create an atmosphere from which judicial activity takes place. When we experience his presence in the earth realm, it is because we have stepped into the realm of heaven and become part of the process. This is why we see in Hebrews 12:22-24 that we have come to certain things. These things haven't come to us, but we have come to them. We have moved into the spiritual dimensions in heaven. Though we may be in the natural realm on the earth, simultaneously we can be in the spirit about the throne of God in heaven. This occurs through our interacting with the worship of heaven and becoming a functional part of the general assembly or mass meeting about the throne.